I never thought I'd find myself in this situation. I guess you never do you? One day, everything's fine, and the next, you're facing the harshest reality of your life. But let me start from the beginning. I'm a teacher at a local high school. Nothing too fancy, but I've been doing it long enough to know the routine. The faces come and go, but you get familiar with the ones that stick around. Some are easier to read than others. Some, like my wife's student, were far more complicated. Now, my wife and I, let's call her Ava, had been married for a good few years. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. We had our moments, sure, but who doesn't? There were ups, downs, a lot of late-night talks about nothing, and then the rare deep discussions where you felt like you were really understood. Or so I thought. One thing that really stood out about Ava was her unwavering trust in me. She always believed in me more than I believed in myself. But something changed. I didn't notice it at first, the subtle hints she was giving me. After all, I'm a teacher, not a detective. But as time went on, I started to realize that she was distant. Not in a cold, angry way, but in a way that made me ask, what's going on? The more I thought about it, the more I started noticing things, little things. She'd be on her phone more often, and when I'd glance over, she'd quickly swipe the screen. When I asked about it, she'd just brush it off with a smile, but it didn't feel genuine anymore. And, maybe most telling of all, the time she spent out of the house. At first, it seemed normal. Work, friends, errands. But then it grew. Late-night study groups, last-minute meetings. The patterns started forming. But here's the twist that really got to me. One of her students from the high school I teach at, a bright kid with ambition, seemed to be taking up more and more of her time. I'd hear her mention him casually, but the way she spoke of him, it wasn't like she was just talking about a student. No, it was something else. And it bothered me. That kid, I didn't think much of it at first, but something felt wrong, like a slow drip of suspicion that I couldn't quite ignore. And that's where it all started. But trust me, it's going to get worse. This isn't the part where you get answers. Not yet. You see, the more I delved into my thoughts, the more I uncovered, the more I realized I had no clue what was truly happening behind my back. Who was she really spending her time with? What was really going on? But there's a catch. The answer. It wasn't what I expected. Doubt is a strange thing. It starts small, a nagging feeling at the back of your mind, and slowly grows until it consumes you. I didn't want to believe it, but the signs were there. Subtle, but undeniable. At first, I thought it was just me overthinking things. Ava had been distant lately. Nothing huge, just little things. She seemed more preoccupied with her phone. When I'd glance over, she'd quickly lock the screen, or when I asked about her day, she'd brush it off too quickly. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then, one evening, as I walked into the kitchen, I found Ava sitting at the counter with her phone in hand. When I entered, she quickly locked the screen and gave me a nervous smile. "Hey, everything okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Yeah, just work emails," she replied, voice a little too stiff. I didn't press her. Instead, I went about making dinner, but the unease was still there, swirling in my chest. The next day, I had a conversation with one of my students, Mark. He was one of Ava's special projects, tutoring him to help him get into college. I'd heard her talk about him often, always in the context of her work. "She's really been helping you out a lot," I said to him during class. Mark grinned. "Yeah, she's awesome. Really pushes me." The way he said it stuck with me. It was too familiar, like he wasn't just talking about a teacher helping him with schoolwork. My stomach tightened, but I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was just my mind playing tricks on me. Later that night, I was sitting at the kitchen table when I noticed something strange. Ava's phone buzzed on the counter. I couldn't help myself. I picked it up. There, right at the top of her messages, was a conversation with Mark. My heart dropped. "I'm so proud of you for pushing yourself. Can't wait to see you again tomorrow." I stared at it for a long time, trying to make sense of what I was reading. My hands were shaking. I had no idea what was really going on, but it was clear this wasn't just a student-teacher relationship. I couldn't confront her without being sure. The doubt was growing inside me, but I couldn't jump to conclusions. So I started paying closer attention. I noticed more late-night messages, more time spent away from home. She was always busy with work, but I began to feel like I was the last person she wanted to talk to. The worst part? I still didn't have proof, just pieces of the puzzle. And the more I pieced them together, the clearer it became. Ava wasn't just hiding something from me. She was hiding him. I wasn't just suspicious anymore. I was starting to know, deep down, what was going on. But I needed proof. I had to be sure. I wasn't ready to confront her yet. I needed proof, something concrete to make sure I wasn't just imagining things. I could feel the distance growing between us, but I refused to face the truth until I had undeniable evidence. But with each passing day, it became harder to ignore. The message, "Can't wait to see you again tomorrow." What did that mean? It wasn't just a student and teacher relationship anymore. It was something else. Something that felt like betrayal. I made a decision. I would follow her. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't sit back any longer. If she wasn't going to be honest, I had to find out for myself. It was a Friday when she left, saying she'd be back later. As usual, there was no mention of where she was going. I decided to follow her at a distance. I wasn't sure what I'd find, but I had to see it with my own eyes. She drove to a quiet cafe on the edge of town. I'd never seen her go there before. My heart pounded as I parked a few blocks away and watched her get out. And then I saw him. Mark. He was already sitting at a table, waiting for her. They greeted each other with smiles, but it wasn't just friendly. It was intimate. I watched, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach as they hugged. And then, they sat down together, laughing, talking in a way I hadn't seen her do with me in months. I stayed parked, staring at them for over an hour. It was clear now. This wasn't just about tutoring. She wasn't helping him. They were too comfortable with each other. Too close. I wanted to storm in there, demand answers, but I stayed put. I was frozen, watching my life unfold in front of me. I had my proof now. My heart felt like it was being ripped in two. When she came home later, everything seemed normal. She didn't know I had followed her. I sat in the car outside, struggling to calm down. I had the truth. But now, I wasn't sure what to do with it. As soon as she stepped inside, I knew I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Ava," I said, my voice tight, "we need to talk." She looked at me, startled. "What's wrong?" I met her gaze, my heart racing. I wanted to say it. "I know what you're doing," but I couldn't find the words. Not yet. I could feel the tension the moment she walked in. Her usual smile didn't reach her eyes. Something was off. I took a deep breath, trying to keep myself composed. "Ava," I said, my voice a little tighter than I meant. "We need to talk." Her face faltered, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her features. "What's wrong?" she asked, though I could tell she knew. "About Mark?" I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I know." She froze. Her eyes widened for a second, and I saw her trying to process the words. Then, she smiled, forced and uncomfortable. "What are you talking about?" I couldn't stop now. "I know about you too. The way you look at each other, the messages, everything." Her face went pale. She started to speak, but faltered, searching for the right words. "He's just a student I'm helping. It's nothing like you think." "Don't lie to me." I shot back, my frustration boiling over. "You're not fooling me. I saw it with my own eyes today at the cafe. You weren't just helping him. You two were together." She went silent, eyes avoiding mine. That look told me everything I needed to know. She was guilty. "I've been watching you, Ava," I continued. "I followed you today. I saw how you two were. It's not just tutoring. It's something more." Her breath caught in her throat. Her gaze finally met mine, but there was no defense left, no explanation she could offer. "How long?" I asked, the words barely a whisper. "How long has this been going on?" She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Her lips trembled, and tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she whispered finally, barely audible. "I'm so sorry, I couldn't stop myself, but it just happened." Her words hit me like a punch. I wanted to yell, to demand answers, but instead, I just stood there, my heart sinking. "Enough," I said, my voice breaking despite myself. "I don't want to hear it. You made your choice." She reached for me, desperate, but I pulled back. "Please, don't go," she begged, her voice cracking. "I love you." I turned away, unable to look at her anymore. "You don't get to say that," I replied coldly, walking toward the door. "Not anymore." And with that, I left. The silence that followed felt like a weight I couldn't shake off. It was as though the air around me had thickened, pressing down on my chest. I had walked out, but I wasn't sure where to go, what to do. I didn't want to leave the house, but I couldn't stay there, either. The emptiness of the space, of us, hit me like a wave. I ended up walking around the block, just trying to put some distance between myself and the overwhelming mess I found myself in. My mind raced. What was I supposed to do now? My wife, the woman I trusted, had betrayed me in a way I couldn't even begin to understand. And for what? A student? Someone half her age? It didn't make sense. I thought about confronting him, Mark, the guy who'd been a part of this. But part of me wondered if it was worth it. What could I say to him? Would it change anything? The damage had been done. By the time I got back, it was dark. I didn't know what to expect, but Ava wasn't there. She'd left. I figured she'd be somewhere else, somewhere she could hide from the mess we'd just created. I couldn't blame her. I didn't want to be there either. For a while, I just sat in the living room, staring at the empty space, the untouched dinner on the table. Everything felt foreign, like I was living in someone else's life. It was hard to believe any of this was real. It wasn't until late that night that she came back. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying for hours. She looked at me as if she wanted to say something, but the words were stuck. I don't know what to do, she said softly, almost defeated. I'm sorry. Sorry. It felt like the word didn't even carry any weight anymore. Sorry didn't fix what had been broken. It didn't undo the betrayal. I can't do this, Ava. I replied, my voice hoarse. I don't know if I can even look at you the same way. She flinched, but I didn't care. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. I don't want your apologies, I said, the words harsh now. I want the truth. But what's the point of that? You've already made your choices. She reached for me again, but I pulled back. Please, just let me breathe. She nodded, backing away. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. The night dragged on, but neither of us knew what to say anymore. What was there left to say? It was done. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. Her smile, the way she'd look at me, how everything had seemed so perfect. But now I realized it was all an illusion. I'd been living in a house of mirrors. I couldn't stay here much longer. I had no idea what the next step would be, but one thing was clear. The life I thought I knew was gone. The next morning, everything felt different. I woke up in the same bed, in the same house, but it wasn't my home anymore. It was just a place, empty, cold, and full of things that no longer mattered. Ava hadn't come back to bed. I didn't expect her to. I didn't know what she was doing, but I couldn't bring myself to check on her. It was like we were living in two separate worlds now. I knew what she had done, and I couldn't forget it, no matter how much I wanted to pretend. The kitchen was quiet. The coffee pot was still brewing, but I couldn't drink the coffee anymore. I just stood there, staring at the empty mug in front of me. Every part of my body screamed to leave, to walk away from this place, but I didn't know where I would go. I couldn't just leave, at least not yet. I had to figure out what came next. Ava appeared in the doorway. Her face was pale, and her eyes were still red from crying. She stood there, watching me as if waiting for me to say something. I didn't know what to say. I've been thinking, she started, her voice shaky. Maybe it's better if I leave. For now, I know you need space. I just want you to know I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I can't keep living like this. I didn't respond immediately. She was right. We couldn't go on pretending. The thought of her leaving didn't even sting anymore. It felt almost like a relief. But then again, that's how betrayal works. It twists everything until nothing feels real. You can't just leave and expect everything to be fine. I said finally, my voice flat. You've crossed a line, Ava. You didn't just betray my trust. You broke something I don't think we can fix. Her face crumpled, but she didn't say anything. She stood there for a moment, then turned and walked away without another word. She didn't ask where I'd be going or if I was coming back. It felt final. I stayed there for a while longer, just sitting, trying to breathe through the suffocating silence. It was so quiet, almost too quiet. The life we built together was gone, and in its place was this heavy, empty space that neither of us knew how to navigate. I packed a bag, just a few things. Nothing special, just enough to get me through the next few days. The idea of leaving felt like a huge step, but I knew it was the only choice I had left. When I walked out the door, Ava was nowhere to be seen. Maybe she was packing too, or maybe she just needed time to think. But I couldn't wait around to figure it out. I needed to get away from everything, away from her, before I lost myself completely. As I stepped out into the driveway, I felt the weight of the decision sinking in. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't keep living in this lie. I had to find a way to rebuild. The hardest part was over. The choice had been made. But now, the real challenge began. I needed to get away. My mind was racing, my thoughts too tangled to make sense of anything. I drove aimlessly at first, not knowing where I was going, but I couldn't stay there. Not with her betrayal still hanging over me. I ended up at a small hotel on the outskirts of town. The kind of place where no one would ask questions, where I could just be alone. I checked in under a fake name. I didn't want any reminders of my life, of her. The room was quiet, almost eerily so. I dropped my bag onto the bed and sank into the chair by the window, staring at nothing. My body ached, but it wasn't physical pain. It was exhaustion of the soul, the kind that sinks in when you realize everything you thought was solid has crumbled. I reached for my phone. It felt like the last thing I wanted to do, but I had to. It was instinct. She'd probably tried to call. I didn't even want to hear her voice, but I opened the messages anyway. There it was, a message from Ava. Please don't leave me. I know I've ruined everything, but I swear I never meant to hurt you. I love you, I need you. I stared at it for a long time, my thumb hovering over the screen. I didn't know what I could possibly say to her anymore. It wasn't just the affair. It was everything. The lies, the distance, the way she'd pulled away from me without warning. I put the phone down without replying. What could I say that wouldn't sound like an excuse? She'd made her choice. I couldn't keep chasing someone who didn't want me. I needed air, so I left the hotel. I wandered the streets, not knowing where I was headed. The city felt empty at night, and yet, it was full of people who didn't know the storm I was carrying. I walked through a small park, sat on a bench, and tried to breathe. The cool air helped, but not enough to calm the storm inside. I didn't want to be here anymore, didn't want to be in my life as it was now. But I didn't know what to do next. I was adrift, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely lost. I glanced at my phone again, seeing the missed calls and messages. Ava, trying to reach me, apologizing. I didn't respond. I wasn't angry anymore. The rage had worn off, replaced by an emptiness that stretched out farther than I could see. I realized that she had already chosen him, and I needed to choose myself. I woke up the next morning, the quiet in the hotel room pressing in on me. I didn't feel any better. If anything, the weight of the situation seemed heavier. The silence around me was deafening, and I couldn't escape it. Ava's words from last night, her message begging me not to leave, lingered in my head. I love you, I need you. But it didn't change anything. It didn't erase the betrayal. I couldn't go back to that life, to her, not after what had happened. But part of me still longed to, wanted to believe we could fix it. I knew I couldn't, though. Too much had been broken. She had crossed a line, and I wasn't sure it could ever be undone. I spent most of the day pacing around the hotel room, restless. It was all I could do to keep my mind occupied. I didn't want to go back to the house. I didn't want to face her, but I didn't know how to move forward from here. I kept replaying the moment when I'd walked out of the house, when I'd told her it was over. The look in her eyes, the desperation in her voice, it haunted me. She had made her choices, and I had to make mine. I thought about calling a friend, someone to talk to, but I couldn't bring myself to. Who would understand? I didn't even understand what was happening in my own life. I was alone, with nothing but my thoughts, and the more I thought, the less clear everything became. By the time evening came, I found myself standing in front of the hotel mirror, staring at my reflection. I barely recognized the person looking back at me. This wasn't the man I used to be. He was lost, adrift in a sea of confusion and pain. I tried to call her, just once. But after a few rings, I hung up. I couldn't do it. I couldn't face her. The truth was too much to deal with right now. Instead, I sat back down on the bed, the weight of the phone in my hand, wondering how long I would feel this empty. How long would I stay here, stuck in limbo, unsure of what my next move should be? But deep down, I knew I couldn't stay in this state forever. I couldn't let this define me. I had to find a way out, find a way to reclaim my life. But that was a thought for another day. Right now, all I could do was breathe and hope that tomorrow would be a little easier. The next morning felt no different. I had managed to sleep, but the dreams were full of chaos, filled with flashes of Ava and Mark, their faces smirking back at me like they knew a secret I didn't. I woke up, and for a moment, I wasn't sure where I was. The hotel room was cold and unfamiliar, a reminder that I had left everything behind. I felt stuck in this space between what I had known and the reality I was now facing. There was a sharp pang of regret, but it didn't belong to just one person anymore. I regretted the life I thought we had, the trust one gave without hesitation. But mostly, I regretted not seeing this coming. I had let my guard down. I had to get out. I couldn't just keep staying in that hotel room, letting the guilt and confusion swallow me whole. It wasn't healthy, and I knew it. I couldn't stay numb forever. I called the hotel reception, asking for an extra day. They obliged without question, and then I hung up, letting out a long breath. There was no point in rushing back. But I had to start doing something, anything, to feel like I had control again. I grabbed my phone, ready to call a friend, someone, anyone, but stopped myself. What could I say? Hey, I'm staying in a hotel because my wife is cheating on me. Want to grab a drink? No, I wasn't ready to talk about it. Not yet. I needed time. But I also needed to move forward. Sitting in a hotel room wasn't going to fix anything. I had to deal with what had happened, face the harsh truth, and start rebuilding. So, I left the room. I didn't know where I was going, but I just started walking. The weather was cold, and the streets were empty, but the air felt different this time, like something was shifting. Maybe it was the first step toward healing. Or maybe I was just escaping for a while, trying to outrun the pain. I ended up at a small cafe I'd passed by a few times in the past. It wasn't anything special, just a place to grab a coffee, but I liked that it was quiet, not busy. I ordered a coffee and sat by the window, watching the world go by. As I sat there, a thought struck me. This was the first time in a long time I was truly alone. I'd always been a part of a couple, a family. But now, I was only myself. The silence in the cafe wasn't unsettling. It felt peaceful, almost comforting. It was a reminder that I didn't need anyone else to define who I was. I wasn't just Ava's husband. I was me, and I had to start from there. When I left the cafe, I felt lighter. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know what the future would look like, but I knew I couldn't keep living in this broken version of my life. I had to rebuild. It wouldn't be easy, but it was the only choice I had left. I had to move on for me. It had been a few days since I'd left the hotel. The quiet space I had created for myself felt like a temporary refuge, but every day, I found myself thinking about the life I'd left behind. I'd started sorting through what I wanted to do next, but it wasn't as simple as walking away. I couldn't just ignore what had happened. It was part of me now. I spent hours walking around, trying to get a grip on my emotions, but nothing seemed to help. I was still numb, still disconnected, and it wasn't until I picked up the phone that I realized the next step had to be made. I dialed Ava's number, hesitating for a moment before pressing call. The phone rang a few times before she picked up. Hello. Her voice was shaky, unsure. I didn't know what I expected, but hearing her voice again made my stomach turn. It was like hearing the voice of someone I didn't know anymore. It felt like a stranger. Ava. I started, my voice rough. I think we need to talk. I know, she whispered. I've been waiting for you to call. I'm so sorry for everything. Her apology hung in the air like a weight, but I didn't respond right away. She had apologized 100 times over, but words didn't fix this. I could hear the desperation in her voice, but the truth was, I wasn't sure I cared about the apologies anymore. You need to tell me what this means for us, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. What does all of this mean? Can we ever go back to what we were? There was a long silence, and I could almost feel the distance between us, thick and palpable. She didn't respond right away, and when she finally spoke, her words were hesitant. I don't know, she admitted, her voice breaking. I want to make it work, but I don't know how. I know I've hurt you beyond repair, but I love you. I want us back, but I know I don't deserve it. I was quiet, letting her words sink in. I didn't know what I expected her to say, but it wasn't that. I want us back. Could I even believe that? Could I believe in something so broken? Love doesn't fix betrayal. Ava, I said, the weight of the words heavy in my chest. I don't know if I can come back from this. You made your choice, and it wasn't me. I could hear her breathing on the other end, but I didn't wait for her to speak. I was done. I wasn't angry anymore, but I was exhausted. The truth had settled in. I'm not coming home. I continued, my voice more certain now. I'm moving on. I need to be on my own for a while. She didn't argue. She didn't try to stop me. There was nothing left to say. The hardest part was done. I had made the decision. And for the first time in days, I felt a small sense of relief. I was moving forward, even if I didn't know exactly where it would lead. The days after I left the hotel felt like I was floating, caught somewhere between my past and what I hoped would be my future. I wasn't in my old life, but I wasn't fully embracing the new one either. I was somewhere in limbo, struggling to find my footing. I stayed in the hotel for a few more nights, giving myself time to breathe. But there was no peace. My mind wouldn't stop, the endless cycle of memories, emotions, and questions. Every time I thought I was getting clarity, doubts crept in. Was leaving Ava the right choice? Could I really just walk away from everything? But deep down, I knew I couldn't keep living in confusion. I had to start moving forward, even if it was slow. I left the hotel, finding a small apartment. Nothing special, just enough for me to start over. It wasn't home, not yet, but it was a place where I could begin again. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe, though it wasn't easy. I sat in the empty apartment that night, a cold pizza in front of me, still feeling like an outsider in my own life. The weight of everything wasn't gone, but I wasn't drowning anymore. I was finally taking a step away from the past. My phone rang a few hours later. I didn't have to look at the screen to know it was Ava. The tightness in my chest was instant, but I answered it anyway. "Hello," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Alec," she said softly. "I just wanted to check on you. See how you're doing." I sat on the floor, leaning against the wall. How could I explain how I felt when I didn't even understand it myself? "I'm okay," I said, though it didn't feel true. "I'm doing what I need to do. I need some time." "I understand," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Alec. I love you. I wish I could take it all back." I closed my eyes, the words feeling hollow now. It didn't matter how sorry she was. I didn't know if I could ever believe in those words again. "I think we both need time," I said, the weight of the words hitting me. "We both need to heal." There was a pause. I could hear her trying to hold it together on the other end. "Goodbye, Alec," she said quietly. "I hope one day we can fix this, but if not, I understand." I took a deep breath. The decision was made. There was no going back. "Goodbye," I said, hanging up before the tears could rise. I put the phone down, and a sense of finality settled in. It was done, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I might be okay. The next few weeks passed by in a blur. I kept to myself, focused on the small tasks of settling into my new apartment, making it feel like my own. The walls felt bare, and the space felt empty, but there was a certain comfort in that emptiness. It was mine. I wasn't surrounded by memories that could drown me at every turn. It wasn't the home I had shared with Ava, but it was a place to begin again. I spent the first few days doing nothing but unpacking and organizing. I didn't want to think too much. I didn't want to analyze how I felt or what I was doing. I just needed to keep busy. Every time I thought about the past, about what I'd left behind, a sharp pain shot through me. I tried to ignore it, but the ache lingered. I couldn't keep avoiding it forever, though. It wasn't until one quiet evening, as I was sitting on the couch with a book I hadn't really been reading, that the weight of everything hit me. I set the book aside, staring at the blank walls. I had made the decision to leave, but there was no guide for this. There was no handbook for how to survive a heartbreak like this. I thought about Ava. She had reached out, texted a few times, sent a message, left voicemails. But I hadn't responded. The silence felt right, even if it was painful. I had made my choice, but that didn't mean it didn't hurt. I missed her. Not the version of her that had betrayed me, but the one I thought I knew. The one who had been my partner for so many years. But even as I missed her, I knew I couldn't go back. I couldn't unlearn what I now knew about her. I had to accept it. She was gone. And so was the life I thought we'd have. The phone buzzed in my hand. I picked it up, not sure who it was, but knowing the moment I saw her name that it was Ava again. My finger hovered over the screen. What could she possibly want now? I had no answers for her. She had no answers for me. Maybe this is for the best, I thought. But, for a brief moment, I let myself wonder, what would life look like now? Days turned into weeks, and I began to settle into my new routine. The apartment was starting to feel less like a temporary refuge, and more like a place where I could rebuild. I had my own space, something I hadn't realized I desperately needed until I had it. But even in the quiet, the void left by Ava's absence lingered, like a shadow that wouldn't quite leave. I tried to keep busy, focusing on work and the small tasks of day-to-day life. I found myself in a rhythm I hadn't had in years. No more late-night talks. No more planning for a future that no longer seemed possible. It was just me. It felt both freeing and terrifying at the same time. Then, one evening, As I was getting ready to leave for the grocery store, my phone buzzed. It was a call from an unknown number. I didn't want to answer it, but something made me pick up. "Hello," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. There was a pause on the other end, and then the voice I had been avoiding for weeks. "Alec." It was Ava. I hadn't heard from her in days. My chest tightened. Part of me wanted to hang up, to keep this new life, this distance, but the other part of me, well, it wanted to know why she was calling. "Yeah," I said quietly, sitting down on the couch. "What is it?" I know this is probably the last thing you want right now, but I just need to talk to you. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I don't know how to move forward without hearing from you. I don't want to pressure you. I just need some closure. For both of us." The words hit me harder than I expected. I had been running from this moment, telling myself I didn't need answers. But maybe, just maybe, I did. "I don't think I can give you that," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I've been trying to move on, Ava. I can't go back to that place anymore." "I know," she whispered, her voice cracking. "And I understand. I never realized how much I hurt you until it was too late. I wish I could take it all back. I really do." I stayed silent for a moment. The part of me that had once loved her so deeply wanted to forgive her, wanted to believe in what we had. But the reality of everything, the betrayal, the lies, was too fresh. I wasn't ready to let that go. Not yet. "I don't think I can forgive you," I said finally, each word heavy in my chest. "Not now? Maybe not ever." There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear her breathing softly, the weight of my words sinking in. "I understand," she said, her voice low. "I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. For everything." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of the conversation settling around me. There was nothing else to say. We were both too broken, too far apart now. "Goodbye, Ava," I said, my voice breaking just a little. I hung up before I could hear her response, before I could regret it. I sat there, staring at the phone in my hand, a quiet sense of finality washing over me. I had made my choice. It was done, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was drowning anymore. The days after the call were quieter than I expected. There was no relief, no immediate sense of closure, just an overwhelming silence. The echoes of Ava's apology still lingered in my mind, but I knew there was nothing more to be said. We had both said our pieces, and the space between us had only grown. I spent the next week focusing on my work, trying to distract myself with the small, everyday tasks that had become my new normal. I didn't realize how much I had been running from the reality of what happened until I started facing it head-on. There were moments, especially in the quiet of the apartment, when I thought I could feel the weight of everything catching up to me. But each time, I pushed it aside. I couldn't afford to break down again. I had already done that, already felt that raw pain of betrayal. I couldn't let it consume me any longer. But moving on wasn't as simple as deciding not to look back. There were moments when I found myself thinking of Ava, those flashes of our life together that would hit me out of nowhere. The laughter, the late-night talks, the dreams of a future we would never share. I couldn't help it. It wasn't something I could turn off, and I didn't know how to feel about it. Was it okay to still mourn the life we had, even after everything that had happened? Was I supposed to just erase her from my memory like she had erased me from hers? One evening, I found myself at the same cafe I had gone to weeks ago. It had become a kind of refuge, a place where I could think without the constant reminders of the life I was trying to leave behind. As I sat there, sipping my coffee, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't consumed by the desire for revenge or the hurt from what had happened. I had been angry, yes, but more than that, I had been lost. I had wanted answers that Ava couldn't give me, and I had clung to the hope that somehow, things would go back to the way they were. But I knew that wasn't possible anymore. I was starting to let go. Slowly, but surely. I didn't know where my future was headed. I didn't know if I would ever love again, or if I could even trust someone enough to let them in. But I knew one thing. I had to keep moving forward. I wasn't the man I used to be, but I was learning to accept that. I was becoming someone new, and that wasn't a bad thing. It wasn't going to be easy, but for the first time in a while, I felt a flicker of hope. The days blurred together as I continued adjusting to my new life. There were ups and downs, good moments and hard ones. But slowly, I was starting to feel like myself again. I wasn't rushing into anything, not with people or with life. I was giving myself the time I needed to heal. I had stopped checking my phone for Ava's messages, stopped searching for signs that everything could somehow be fixed. I had accepted that it wasn't meant to be. The relationship that once defined me was over, and that was something I couldn't change. But I realized something important. I didn't need to change it. What I needed was to move on, to find a way to rebuild my own life without relying on the past to define me. One afternoon, I was walking through the park when I bumped into an old friend from college, someone I hadn't seen in years. We exchanged pleasantries, shared a laugh about how much time had passed. She asked about my life, and without thinking, I told her the truth, about Ava, the affair, everything. It was the first time I had spoken so openly about it, and it felt like a weight had been lifted. For so long, I had kept everything inside, but now, speaking about it didn't feel like I was betraying myself. It felt like I was finally releasing the last of the ghosts. We talked for hours, catching up on old memories, laughing at stupid jokes we had shared, and by the end of the conversation, I realized something else. I wasn't the same person who had walked away from that life with Ava. I wasn't broken anymore. I was different, yes, but stronger for it. When we parted ways, I felt lighter, like I was closing a chapter. I didn't need to hold on to the pain. I didn't need to keep dragging it with me. The past had shaped me, yes, but it didn't have to define me. Back at my apartment that evening, I stood in front of the mirror, looking at myself, truly seeing myself for the first time in months. There was a sense of peace in my reflection. I wasn't happy, not yet, but I was okay. And maybe that was all I could ask for in this new chapter of my life. I sat down at the table, opened a notebook, and began to write. I didn't know what I was writing exactly. Maybe a letter to myself, maybe to the version of me that had been lost for so long. But it didn't matter. What mattered was that I was moving forward, taking control of my own life, and finding my own peace. The future was uncertain. I didn't have all the answers, and I didn't know where it would take me. But for the first time, I was okay with that. The road ahead might be long, but I had learned to walk it on my own. And that, in the end, was enough.